guys, today I wanted to rank one of my favorite film franchises of all time, and that is the Indiana Jones series. To me, this is the definitive adventure series by which all others are compared, and Indiana Jones himself is the quintessential adventurer. Now, before I go into the Rotten Tomatoes scores and my personal ranking of the movies, go ahead and put yours down in the comments section down below with any commentary, feedback, or scores that you would like to include in that. I do read all of those, and I try to comment back on as many as is possible because I don't want to just talk about these movies. I want to talk about them with you. Now, if you're new to my channel, know that I put out a couple of these ranking videos each and every week. Over the weekend, I put out one that ties back to one of the new releases, and then in the middle of the week, I put out one tied to just something I want to talk about or something that you have requested that I rank in the comment section down below. If you want to see the previous videos that I've ranked or series that I've ranked, check out that card above. All right, now let's see how Rotten Tomatoes scored each of the movies in the Indiana Jones franchise. Coming in at number 4 is Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull with 77%. So it's at the bottom where you'd expect it to be, but with 77%, which is a really high score. It is certified fresh. The vast majority of critics actually liked this movie, and so it's interesting the way that worked out. Coming in at number 3 is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom with 85%. Just above that, at number 2 is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade with 88%. And at number 1 is Raiders of the Lost Ark with 94%. Now, that's kind of interesting because I would expect Raiders of the Lost Ark to be actually kind of higher than that. But if you look at the actual critical ratings of it, while of course the vast majority did like it, there's a handful of critics that did not like this movie, which is absolutely fascinating because I don't know how you don't like that movie, but apparently there are some people that did not care for that movie so much. With all that said, I'm going to go ahead and get started with this, and at number 4 for me is Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls. Now, for me, I actually like this movie quite a bit more than most people, which is only really to say I don't hate it. I think that it's a decent adventure movie, but a really bad Indiana Jones movie. If this movie had come out and it wasn't called Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, it was just Johnny Adventurer and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull starring Nicolas Cage, we'd be like, yeah, there's this dumb adventure movie. It was kind of an Indiana Jones ripoff with Nicolas Cage, but it was a good bit of fun. It had some really good action sequences in it. We'd probably give it like thumbs up, like, it'd be one thumb up, one thumb down. But because it's Indiana Jones, by comparison to what came before it, and that we'd been waiting 20 years for this movie, oh, wow. It looks so bad in comparison. Actually, if you check out this video above, earlier on my channel, I did a 35-minute critical analysis of this movie on what was wrong with it and how to fix it. It's the most in-depth review and analysis on my entire channel of any movie because I look at this movie as such a fascinating thing because there's some things in it that I really like or that were handled really well, such as when they did practical stunts and practical action, it's just as good as the practical work and action in the other films. And then there's all the weird CGI green screen crap that ruins the movie and looks so out of place in the movie itself, but more so in the context of this series as a whole. And so all around, it's such a weird mix of things, and it feels like there could have been a good movie here. Now, it's infamous have been taken almost 20 years to get it made. It was in development hell, and a long series of A-list screenwriters worked on the script for it. It's well documented that both Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford were not crazy about the alien direction that George Lucas wanted to take things. And of course, Shia LaBeouf has crapped all over the film publicly, which is probably not the wisest thing to do. But you could see where this could have been good. It could have been not as necessarily as good as those original 3, certainly not as good as the best of the series, but a respectable continuation of the series. And instead we got this bizarre thing. The movie doesn't look right. Like there's a different cinematographer. And so the whole movie, just the coloring of it and the glossiness of it doesn't look right in the film series as compared to what came before it. Because there's so much CGI and green screen, once again, it doesn't look right. It pulls you out of the movie as compared to what came before and what we saw before. And then especially when you get into the spectacle CGI fest of the final bit where the aliens finally show up and it's just a person standing on a green screen while beams are flying all around them, it feels so out of place. Now, it's of course a film series where God does exist and his angels and show up to fly out of the Ark of the Covenant to kill people and they explode and all sorts of things happen that are very fantastical in nature. But what didn't happen at the end of Last Crusade or at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark is that they open the Ark of the Covenant and they show up in heaven and beams fly around them and God shows up. It's not like when someone gains eternal life in Last Crusade, the gates of heaven arrive so that God can be... It doesn't go so over the top. It's all subtle when dealing with these things. And then Crystal Skull goes full CGI fest, and it feels out of place. There's too many wink, wink, nod, nods at for previous things, and it doesn't work. But if you watch that analysis video I did, I think it could have worked, and I give my thoughts on just the small changes that would make certain things work better. Taking the general idea of what they had, and some of the ideas that were scrapped from various different versions of the script. I researched a lot of that stuff, and if you take it all together, I think you could have made a good movie. And instead what you have is a weird thing that we got. With all that said, since I don't hate this as much as most people, and I think there is a good adventure movie kind of in here if it wasn't Indiana Jones, I'm going to give this one a 6.1 out of 10. Now, for me, a 6 out of 10 is kind of that line between is it fresh or is it rotten? If I was on Rotten Tomatoes, that would be kind of my line. Below 6.0 is going to be and above it is a recommendation. This one is just barely squeaking over that recommendation to be like, I guess I got it. I'll give it a thumbs up because I do think there's good stuff in here. There is some things that I like about it. I don't get bored watching it. Some of it's forgettable. There's a lot of mistakes here compared to the other Indiana Jones movies. It's not worthy, but it's just a movie in and of itself. I'd go just barely squeaked into a positive review for it as an Indiana Jones movie. Yeah. Hey, Johnny V. Can I call you Johnny?
Not on your life.
Well, sorry, man. Hey, can I tell you about MoviePass?
No!
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you anyway. So MoviePass is the way I go see all my movies. Here's how it works. I pay $45 a month, and they send me a... Oh, that was dramatic. They send me the card in the mail, and whenever I want to go see a movie, I pull out my phone, open up their app, it's free, select the movie I want to go see in their app, they put the money on the card that you kicked out of my hand, and then I swipe it and it covers it. It's really a great deal. So for $45 per month, you can go see as many movies you want. Just a couple catches in there. First one, you can only see one movie per day. Second one, you can only see any one movie one time. But beyond that, it's just a great deal.
Not bad, partner.
So if you're interested in signing up, please use the link down below in this video. You guys too. It does help out my channel, but this really is the way I go see all my movies, and I do recommend you check it out, Mr. Van Damme. You gonna do it?
It's done!
Wow, that was really fast. Hey, can I get a high five before you go? That was a kick, not a high five. But seriously, guys, it is the way I go see movies. I do recommend it. It's a good deal if you go see enough movies per month to warrant it. I've had a great experience with it, and I think you will too if it's the right service for you. If you're gonna sign up, please consider using that link down below. It does help out my channel. With that said, let's get back to our video.
See you next time.
Coming in at number 3 for me is going to be Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Now, there's a gigantic gap between Crystal Skull and this movie for me. And I'm going to be honest with you, when I'm in certain moods, this is my favorite of the bunch. On a technical level, all things considered, I can't possibly put it on the level of the two above it on the list, but it's just personal preference. When I'm in the right mood, I really, really like this movie. And what I love about this movie is they understood what their franchise was, which he's an adventurer and he's been going off on these adventures for a long time. Technically, in the timeline of things, this is a prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark, and that's essentially almost inconsequential to the plot of the story except for where he is in life. It's not setting up things. It doesn't try and do any of that. It's just telling another adventure in his life, which is so much fun that they created a character that does things like that. Therefore, it makes sense that he would be going on different adventures in different places, and the Nazis don't have to be there for this to be a good movie. And all in all, I enjoy that it's pretty small. It feels a lot smaller scale than Raiders of the Lost Ark as well as Last Crusade, which in those ones, since they're battling the Nazis, since it's in the context of World War II or the precursor to elements of World War II, it feels a little bit more epic because of that. Also, because I'm a part of Western civilization, the fact that the plot elements to it, the MacGuffins in them are parts of Christian theology, which is a key element of Western civilization. It ties back to our history in a way that emotionally resonates with people in the West more than the Shankara stones of this film. And I kind of like that it feels kind of like this distant adventure that doesn't have an epic feel to it the way those other ones do. And it's not like we're trying to stop the Nazis from taking over the world. We're trying to get these stones back so a small village has water and food and famine and the children are brought back. It's for like one small village. And I think that's cool. That's exactly the way I want these stories to work. In somewhat to the reason that I wish that they'd found a different way to continue the series after Last Crusade and do more adventures like this. Now, maybe Harrison Ford didn't want to, or I'm sure Harrison Ford didn't want to keep doing a bazillion of these. And Spielberg certainly didn't want to direct a bazillion of these. But perhaps there was some way that someone else could direct or something like that to tell stories like this. That you just have fun adventures. They don't have to be trying to end World War II and stop the Nazis. You can just tell a great adventure. And that's where there were so many video games, books that continued his stories, and they're good and they're exciting. And why it was so weird that they took so long to give us Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And that they tried to tie in, let's replace the Nazis with the Soviets. And it didn't need to do that. I think Temple of Doom proved we didn't need something better than Raiders of the Lost Ark. We just needed a fun continuation that went in some different directions. It was darker. I get why they might not have wanted to keep going in that darker direction, but I like that we have one that's dark and involves human sacrifice and a guy ripping hearts out, which is actually a lot of fun for me as a teenager in church youth groups, because we'd watch Raiders of the Lost Ark because it's church Bible-y type artifacts. And then someone at a church event snuck in Temple of Doom and we were watching through this, and nobody caught it until they got to the fact that they're doing human sacrifice and ripping people's hearts out. And then a bunch of homeschoolers in the room got really upset about that and started to protest. And so we had to turn the movie off, which disappointed me because I wanted to finish watching the movie. It's a great movie. So anyway, it's a fun movie. It's a dark movie. It's a very different movie while being a very similar movie. It has what I want in a sequel. Different, but the same. And in this context, it works so well. I would give this one an 8.5 out of 10. It's not quite as ambitious. It's not quite as fresh. The love interest is pretty whiny in the movie. She's no Marion Ravenwood. And it's kind of interesting that this is where Steven Spielberg met his wife. And in the movie, she's kind of annoying and wouldn't make you immediately think, hey, I want to marry her, because she just keeps screaming and whining about everything. But Spielberg had a different take on things and married that woman. So that's a lot of fun. So anyway, I'd give it an 8.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. There's some unevenness. There's some stuff where they're just trying to outgross Raiders of the Lost Ark. But all in all, a great, fun time. Sorry for the interruption. I wanted to talk about the single biggest thing you can do to support my channel, and that's to become one of my official patrons by supporting me financially directly on my Patreon page. If you do that, you get kind of special influence into my page in that I ask my patrons every month, what movie would they like me to review? What subject do they want me to address in a video? And essentially they get a personalized video made directly for them each month. I also give them special influence into my future projects I'm working on, give them shout outs, and like in this video right here, I put a list of their names up on the screen because I want to support their channels as well. So if you'd be willing to support my channel because you're a big fan of what we're doing and you want me to continue doing this, please consider supporting me on Patreon. With all that said, let's continue. Coming in at number 2 for me is going to be Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. There's even another pretty big jump right here to get up to this movie, because I put this at number 2, but I was battling as this is number 1. There's things about each of them that I think they did better, where it's just a straight well-constructed adventure movie, I would give it to Raiders of the Lost Ark. But there's a little bit more heart, I think, in Last Crusade in bringing his father into it in some of the way that kind of tied together. And it's a funnier movie. And when I'm taking what I believe my number one on this list, Raiders of the Lost Ark, is the best adventure film of all time, and I think Last Crusade rivals it. I would say it's the number 2 best adventure film of all time. And so I've probably seen it 30, 40, 50 times in my life. I watch it multiple times every year. And it's a movie that I saw in the theaters when it first came out. So it's a movie I can get overly familiar with. I'll throw it in the background while I'm working on something else a lot. And about a couple years ago, I went to go see it in the theater and kind of had that fresh movie theater experience watching it. And it's like I forgot with this movie that I almost could quote line for line, but I forgot just being in that theater, how fun, how emotionally resonant it is, how the musical score by John Williams, they found a new take on it that's, just as good as any of the music that the series has ever had, and maybe a little bit more emotional and touching your hearts in these beautiful themed scores for both the Holy Grail theme as well as the father-son themes in it. Works so wonderfully, and very much so, just like Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's just jam-packed with memorable action sequences and set pieces. Each one of them, you remember the boat chase, you remember the tank chase, and this is a movie that you get to the third act, and the last action beat is 20 minutes, 30 minutes before the movie ends. And the climax of it is people drinking a cup. And it works perfectly. And it's exciting and it's thrilling and emotionally resonant because the script here is so nicely crafted to leading to things where there's stakes, where you care, emotional payoff and faith, and all sorts of themes built throughout the whole movie. I love this movie. Now, what I would say is I've always felt that the cold open with young Indiana Jones is really good as a thing in and of itself. I don't know that I like it as the add-on to this movie. And it's a little bit too convenient in the, well, here's how Indiana Jones got his scar on his chin. Well, there is where Indiana Jones learned to use a whip. There is where he learned or got the hat. And it feels a little bit too convenient in setting some of those things up. And then this particular adventure just happens to go back and his dad's working on the Grail. I mean, it just feels too convenient. And I just don't like it as the cold open necessarily to this movie. It doesn't feel the smoothest way to open this movie. That's the only criticism I have for it. That's it. And I like the intro. I really like it. It's a great intro. River Phoenix, and great version of young Indiana Jones in this. And so I really liked that as well. But all in all, this is one of the greatest sequels of all time that rivals the original. A lot of people put this one over Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I would not argue with you. I would not try and convince you. I don't think you're wrong. And next Tuesday, I might agree with you. I might change my mind based off if I rewatch that one. Maybe it'll scoot up on top, and I would just decide, yeah, that's the one right there. That one's the best one. But all in all, just this movie, so fun in each of the different things and going through the mazes filled with rats and then the fireball, the boat chase, a love interest that's going back and forth as to whether you like her or don't like her. And then Sean Connery shows up. And it's so much fun to see Indiana Jones going back and forth with James Bond. And all the dynamics, their chemistry is perfect and wonderful and fun and funny and awkward and broken, but at the same time, a father that can still speak into the son, hitting all of the right notes. I'm going to give this one a 9.5 out of 10. Other than just that intro, the way they did it, I'm not crazy about it. That's it. If that was smoothed out, I think this one would easily pass Raiders of the Lost Ark for me because it is a wonderful, fun, funny, heartfelt adventure film. Which means coming in at number 1, as I've already told you, is Raiders of the Lost Ark. For me, this is the definitive adventure film by which all other adventure films are measured. When it comes to action, suspense, developing characters, this is just, it's a special movie in my mind. It starts off with this cold open, and we're thrilled and excited by this sequence while knowing almost nothing about these characters that we're watching. It's so well crafted and directed right out of the gate, with each element of the tension and trying to swap things out, the boulder chasing them and then more people chasing them. And even in this intro, we set up the future villain, that there's a rivalry with a fellow archaeologist, treasurer, hunter, who does things very differently than Indiana Jones. It sets it up also perfectly. Then we have expository scenes but in story-wise services the fact of teaching us how smart and intelligent Indiana Jones is. So we're like 10 minutes into the movie, and we've seen he's the adventurer, that he's awesome and cool at being chased by boulders and not dying, and having hundreds of people shooting blow darts at him and evading it. And he's a college professor that the U.S. government views him as the expert to track things down. And we're only shortly into this, and we're already seeing all these elements. Then we get 15 minutes into it. We learn he's a heartbreaker too. And you go through the movie, and it just keeps going and going and going. And it's a movie that I always am watching it, and I think, all right, we're probably only about 40% of the way through this movie, and then it kicks in. It gets so exciting. It's like, oh wow, we're already to this part of this movie, because it's so quick paced in the way it works from beat to beat to beat as the tension grows as he gets more and more in over his head. And the chase scene in this with the truck, to me, is one of the best, maybe the best action sequence, chase sequence, however you want to phrase that, of all time. It's just phenomenally directed, with practical work, stunt work, and John Williams' score perfectly fitting together with what's going on with the characters and the struggle to beat the bad guys, and just a fun, exciting sequence that holds up to this day with the way that it works. And then once again, like Last Crusade, or even more so than Last Crusade, that car chase ends, and there's still 30 minutes left in the movie, and there's no more big action sequences. But because we're so invested in the characters, because we're so interested in what is this Ark of the Covenant, and will the Nazis get away with it, because we're so invested in all of that, we don't even care. We don't need another big action sequence. We've gotten what we need, and we just care about seeing where the journey with these characters goes in discovering what's going on and what's happening. And of course, as the things I've mentioned before throughout all of these, Indiana Jones is such a fun character to be around, played perfectly by Harrison Ford. And it's difficult to think about that when this movie came out, this was a new property. It was just a script that two buddies, George Lucas and Spielberg, bouncing ideas off each other, a bunch of George Lucas to Spielberg, and they're like, yeah. And then they get Lawrence Kasdan to write a script for it. And we get this. We get this movie that at the time it came out, people didn't know what it was the way that we do. And it so perfectly became, right out of the gate, the best of the thing. And it kind of invented the modern blockbuster and the pacing of the way movies are done. And if you look at movies before this, they didn't have kind of this beat by beat action set piece, fast moving, the tension keeps building the way that this is done. Now, you had action movies and some faster things before this, but not with this type of pacing that you see in all modern blockbusters. And so all around, this is a great movie. It's an exciting movie. It definitively established Harrison Ford as one of the greatest leading mans of all time. It's fun, funny, adventurous. I give this one a 10 out of 10, and I don't give many 10 out of 10s. I don't know that any movie that's come out this century I've given a 10 out of 10. They all go back to these just classic type movies that I grew up with, that I think are kind of best of the genre, best of the decade, and absolute personal favorite. And this one for me is a best of all time. It's a best of the genre. And it's a personal favorite. It's probably a top 5 favorite movie of mine of all time. So it's number 1, naturally. But that's that's just my take on it. How about you? Tell me your thoughts on it down below in the comments section down below. Give me your thoughts, your scores, your ratings, all that fun stuff. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. If you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. I do movie reviews, ranking videos like this one each weekend where I talk about something related to a new release, and then one midweek like this one that's just about one of my favorite franchises of all time. But I don't want to just talk about movies, I want to talk about movies with you, so join me in the comment section, tell me what you're thinking, and thank you for watching.